All right. Hello, everyone. Happy 2022. I know that I can't say it's a new year because we're already toward the end of quarter one or the first quarter, but I'm Jen Amos, creator and co-host of the Filipino American Woman Project. And as always, I have my amazing co-host with me, Nani Dominguez, and our special guest, Hero, Nani
Yes.
and Hero. Welcome back.
Nani and Co are here. Hello.
Yes. And I just want to start off by saying thank you to our biasboba.com supporters and members. Honestly, the reason why we are doing this recording is because I realize that, last year we kept saying, hey, if you want to hear from us in the off season, make sure you support us on biasboba.com. For every 20 cups of boba, we would plan on publishing an episode. And so honestly, we did not keep up to our promise. I apologize. And when I realized that we've racked up a couple of cups of boba throughout the off season, it only made sense for us to come back and obviously have this show for you also available via video. So if you are listening to this and you want to see us via video, check out the show notes. We'll have a direct link to the YouTube link in which you can watch. Nani, any opening thoughts you want to share to our biasboba.com members and supporters?
Just thank you for being here. And yeah, we have been having a lot of fun with you guys on biasboba.com while we've been in the off season for TFAW Project. And it's been really refreshing just to interact with you guys over there and have that kind of separate space for our community where we can be kind of more raw and candid, very candid if you watched our latest book club episode.
Yeah. Yes. Sober free.
If you're curious what's going on there and you're not already a member, go on over to biasboba.com and check it out.
Yeah, so thank you all for your support in the off season. It was really validating. And we're going to bring on our guest here in a second. One of my biggest fears in wrapping up our last season was that we're going to be forgotten. Long and behold, we have incredible fans and supporters, such as Rachel Hernandez, who really had been in communication with us really throughout most of last year, even before we went off season, to just engage with us and email us and text us and DM us and all the messages possible. Rachel has been an active listener and supporter of our show. And so let me go ahead and bring on Rachel. So like I said, Rachel Hernandez, also known as Mobile Homegirl, is a best-selling author, real estate investor, international speaker, and podcaster. And I just want to add, a TFAW Project supporter and lover. I want to just add that myself. Rachel, welcome to the Filipino American Woman Project.
Thank you so much, Jen and Nani. It is an honor to be here. I'm just so excited to talk to y'all and also meet our special guest. Hi, Hero.
Hello. He's busy now chewing on his giraffe.
Let's keep him distracted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Rachel, I feel like this was a long time coming. I actually decided to do some research. So you don't know this, but I actually went back to all of our messages, all of them. And Nani can affirm this because she was part of it. But I was reading all of our messages via email, text message, DMs to make sure that, I finally caught up with everything you sent us.
My goodness.
And more importantly, it's like to just know that we have listeners like that who go out of their way to engage with us. Very often, Nani and I mentioned that, we kind of do this in the dark, like figuratively speaking, like we're not actively seeing our, listeners physically. And so when we hear from them, it's very validating to us. And so actually, Rachel, I don't know if you know this, but one of the first messages you ever sent me was in April of 2021 via Facebook message. And I'm trying to remember what the conversation was about, but I think you were introduced to me through someone we know. Through a nonprofit. And all that being said, I just want to say, I think the episode will be out around this time, but happy almost 1 year anniversary since we have connected.
Wow, I'm impressed, Jen. You've done your research because I have not gone back and read all our messages. So. Too many, I guess, right?
Well, I wouldn't say too many. What we often say to our listeners is that, we will respond to every message eventually.
And she does. She does, y'all. She does.
Yeah, because, we have lives, just as you know. But either way, it is really affirming to us to be able to know that people are actively engaging with us. And you have definitely been one of those. So I just want to take this time to thank you again for your engagement and your support.
No problem. It's a great show. I would have never found you had it not been for Asian Podcasters Association. Lee Yuhara had actually told me about y'all And she kept saying, you got to check out Jen Amos. You got to listen to TFAW, Filipino American Woman Project, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a broken record. I'm like, okay, fine. And then I did. I'm like, well, this is actually a really good show. It had good production value. You didn't ramble. It was a certain time period. So I really, really, really commend y'all. You do produce a really good and professional show.
Thank you so much for saying that, because we actually have shared some thoughts about audio quality critiqued by a certain organization that I'm not going to say out loud here. And that episode is actually going to be out on Chismis with Jen and Nani. Nani and I kind of disclose how we really feel about a certain organization. And so I will tell that more with you offline. But for you to say that we actually do a quality production show, and the fact that you see that and recognize it, it really means a lot to me. And I'm sure Nani as well. So thank you so much for letting us know.
Jen, I am in the real estate space. I have heard worse on the telephone. And people will listen for the content.
Yeah.
So
yeah. They'll still go out of their way to listen to it.
Really bad. So y'all put a good show on.
I'm glad we don't do that.
We are very appreciative of you, Rachel, and all that you've shared with us. And I was also surprised to see, like, we've been interacting with you. You know, you're one of the listeners that we engage really often with. And okay. I guess I didn't realize that it had been so long, like a year already, since we've been introduced and like exchanging emails and everything. So yeah, it just feels like we've known each other forever, I guess.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very easy to talk to and very easy to engage with. And you offer a lot to our show.
I'm an extrovert, so just tell me when to be quiet.
Yeah, we need that around here sometimes, you know?
Yeah,
knows that energy.
Yeah, no, it's great. Honestly, like, I used to like not want to be around extroverts for a long time just because it could be draining for me as an introvert. Mm-hmm. But I kind of think like, oh, I can just leverage them to carry on the conversation with someone else. You know, like if I'm amongst a group of friends, it's like, oh, I could just hang out and like, you know, be present with people and kind of absorb what's going on, as opposed to feeling like I have to like be the show in a sense. I'm not saying that extroverts have to be the show, but that's sort of how I often feel if I'm part of a big group. But I feel uncomfortable to do that just because I would prefer to, you know, have 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 people to interact with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as extroverts, we always get called on in big groups. So they just know we'll talk.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, Rachel, what we're going to do this, because something that we kind of have been hinting at our listeners is when we officially start our new season for the new year. I know we're already in March, at least at the time of this recording, but just hang around.
Bear with us.
We are planning on doing a complete rebranding of the show. And so until then, though, I think what we're going to do today is go through the questions that we had typically asked guests in the past, which I think is still very fitting. Honestly, I think if Nani and I reviewed these questions, we would stick with it anyway. Like we probably wouldn't really change them. So first being is, I already asked you like a little bit about, actually, I didn't even ask you. You just told us like how you heard about our show and really what compelled you to listen and even support. So I just, you know, couldn't thank you anymore for, you know, your continual support and all that good stuff. And so the next question the first question I want to get to is, as you know, this is called the Filipino American Woman Project. And I think that everyone defines what that means differently, like in their own way. And so, Rachel, I'm very fascinated with actually your family history. I want you to share it in your words, but tell us a little bit about your background, like your family history, and why you would identify yourself as a Filipino American woman.
Okay, first thing, I want to do a disclaimer here. When people see me, they don't think I'm Filipino. Even Filipinos don't believe I'm Filipino. They think I'm Korean or some mix. It was funny because I was actually at the mall one day with my mother-in-law, and I was actually mistaken for a Japanese pop star. People were asking for autographs. So I kind of have this generic face, but like when I first met my husband. Did you give your autograph? No, I said,
just checking.
And his mom was she was like, oh my God, they think you're famous. Oh my God. So I have a generic face. And I think I'm just kind of like, I'm not trying to brag, just photogenic. I've been asked to model and act and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the thing is, I am Filipino American. When I first met my husband, he thought I was Korean. When I met the Korean market, they think I'm Korean. So, that's one of the things that I get. Like, you're Filipino? What? You don't even look Filipino.
What are the Korean features do they think that you hold? I mean, I think when I see a Filipino, I think I know they're Filipino, but I never assume anymore. So has anyone ever described why they think you're Korean?
I think it's because I'm kind of more on the lighter skinned and I do know the language. So, I say, "Annyeonghaseyo," stuff like that. I've studied, I'm a nerd. I've studied culture. So I've studied Filipino culture. I've studied Korean culture. I've studied the whole history of China. Japan's on my list. I do that. Every year there's something I'm studying for fun. People are like, how do you have time for this? I wake up at 5 a.m. But anyways,
wow,
that's going off. Yeah. So people don't believe I'm Filipino. Even Filipinos don't believe I'm Filipino. And my husband's like, it's just because of the way you look and the way you carry yourself. And disclaimer, my husband is Filipino American. He's darker skinned than me, but he's Americanized. Then when Filipinos, they come up to me, it's like, oh, you're Filipino. I always get immigrants asking me, where are you from? It's never the Caucasian people, not the Latino people, not the African Americans. It's always the immigrants that are they're from Mexico or, Philippines. Oh, where are you from? Were you born here or born there? And I'm like, that is always
that's actually
the first question.
Really interesting that you bring that up because I was just walking the beach with my husband a couple days ago and he had mentioned that he met this couple and we happened to run into the couple when I was walking on the beach with him. And, in the back of my mind, I could immediately tell that they're a Filipino couple, but I didn't want to say it. So I was just talking to them like I would with, any other people we would run into because we have that Southern hospitality here where I live. And so everyone's super friendly anyway, regardless of if you're Filipino or not. And eventually, I was talking to the wife and the husband comes up because he was taking care of their dog. And he was all he's like, are you Filipino? And I was yeah, I am. And he's all I could tell you're Filipino. I'm surprised you guys didn't bring that up sooner. And, in the back of my mind, I'm kind of I personally am uncomfortable asking that question despite having a Filipino American Woman Project podcast show. It's I want people to come forth and tell me. I don't want to assume because even if I get it right, what does that really mean? It's we all are so different in our own way. We all have, come from different backgrounds, even as Filipinos. And, some of us are straight from the Philippines. Some of us are Americanized, like you and myself and Nani. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of what does that even mean if you say, yes, I am Filipino? So I think that's always a very interesting question that comes up is are you Filipino? And it's well, so what if I am? What is that supposed to mean? What is that supposed to mean between us? So I just think it's very interesting that you share that because that just reminds me of an incident that happened to me just recently.
Yeah, I don't look Filipino. So just so y'all know, but I am on the Filipino American Woman Project.
Yeah,
I am
so
Filipino
now this confirms
American. It. Yes, and thank you for believing me.
Yeah.
But I will tell you my story. So yes, I was born here in the States, okay? Born in California, like you, Jen. I'm a Cali girl. I don't use that terminology. I'm, more conservative. But anyways, I was born and raised in Orange County. And so my parents are from the Philippines, but they actually didn't meet until they came to the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They came, I think, in the 70s with the Immigration Act of 1965. Mm-hmm. There's a book, The Latinos of Asia. I don't know if you've all read that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have not.
Caitlin, if you're listening, book club. But it's a great book because it talks about, well, here's my history. It talks about the second wave. So we've been reading about the Carlos Bulasan book and then the Don about the first wave of the Filipinos who immigrated to the United States.
Right.
This is the next wave, and these are the professionals.
Yeah.
The Immigration Act of 1965 opened up a lot of doors, my husband's family included. The professionals came. It was after 1965 when that opened up the doors. So my parents were part of that wave because my dad He was a mechanical engineer, just like your dad, Nani. He had a degree from the Philippines. I don't know much about his background because he doesn't talk about it, just like your family. You know, Nani, you had stated on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I know that my dad's whole thing about the Philippines is like, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You know, it's so poor and they're corrupt. And why did you go there? Like, I went there, like, I think a couple years ago because my husband's friend had gotten married and I actually got to see all the poverty.
Yeah.
And as a kid, my parents really shielded me away from the poverty. Like, don't look at poor people. We were in Mexico, like on a cruise, and cover your eyes, you know, when you're small, like stuff. So I never got to see, you know, poor people. So my dad, I don't know what his background, he won't talk about it. I know he was educated in the Philippines as a mechanical engineer. Then he came to the States and he was very just like me. Maybe that's where I get my workaholic tendencies. Workaholic, you know, I just want to make a lot of money. So he already had his degree, then he got his MBA and then went into upper management. And then so that's his side. My mom's side, she comes from old money, like Jen had said. I talked to Jen about this before, but, and I hope y'all don't hate me, we'll see. But my mom's family owned a lot of land in the Philippines. So she's from the Visayas, and basically they were the absentee landowners that you actually read about in those books, that book club, you know.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes. So basically she grew up on a plantation. She had servants.
Yeah.
Wow.
It came out a couple of years ago, those servants weren't paid. So I think her side of the family had slaves. So, I mean, I'm not proud of it. So my grandfather, they don't tell me much, but he was in politics in the Philippines. And they left the Philippines just before it went into martial law under President Marcos. And I asked my mom, you know, why did you leave? She's like, everything was changing. The politics is changing. So I think they were running away. They could have been ousted. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that my uncle, he has a PhD. They're all educated. My mom went to one of the most prestigious colleges in the Philippines. They were on doctors, lawyers. I mean, everything. Professionals. Wow. One of my uncles was, for 5 years under Marcos, he was actually a political prisoner. And my mom's side of the family had to pay the Philippine government, and I guess through their connections, to get him out. So they, you know, they came, a lot of people on the show, they're running towards something, towards a better life. I think for my family, like my parents, they already had that life, but they had to run away from it because everything was changing, you know, there, because their attitudes, like, there's nothing there. Why are you even learning about your history? My dad was like, why did you even go back there? There's just poor people there. And then he would tell me, like, did you know that if you live in the Philippines, you can't just go to the store and get guitar strings for your guitar? I'm like, you know, like, yeah. So as a kid, we moved every 5 to 7 years because I learned from book club, I guess the Visayas, Jen, they actually like to be more sophisticated and, you know, live lavish lifestyles. And now I see it, you know.
Yeah.
So my mom always wanted a bigger house, more stuff, came from a very materialistic family. And my dad just was wanting to work all the time. He's like, you don't need friends, you know, you've got work. That's his advice to me.
Wow.
You know,
you don't need friends, you've got work. Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, he would just work, you know, and it wasn't like, oh, you know, we really have to pay the bills. No, it would just, I just want to work because, I mean, you know, I guess the house that, you know, they own now after we moved so many times. I mean, Tom Cruise at one point had a vacation house in that neighborhood in Orange County. So who needs a 3,000 square foot home with 4 cars? And like, you know, I grew up with a lot of stuff being materialistic, but my parents rarely spent time with me. My dad was always working. My mom, she was a nurse and she had a college degree in that. but she got an inheritance when my grandparents died from the family money. So she had a social life. So, like me growing up, we had nannies, we had gardeners, just like the Philippines. I'm like, what is this, the Philippines? And then, so I would actually, my husband's like, that is the weirdest thing. I would go on vacation with other people's families. I would have dinner with other people's families because my parents weren't around that much as a kid. So I didn't have that closeness, like what you had, Jen, with your dad, you know, and your family. And then Nani growing up with your cousins and all that and aunts. I did not have that. Yeah. And it's funny because the opposite, my husband's family, like they're on speed dial. Like, you're talking to my dad? What? Like he grew up in the traditional Filipino household. Like, we gotta have dinner. Hey, hey, we're eating right now, you know. And his mom would cook. Like my parents, here's $20, go get Taco Bell, you know. I mean, that's really what it is. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, when I got older, I began to question things like beliefs. And I will say there are a lot of things that I don't agree that maybe they had these beliefs, but I don't agree with. There's a lot of prejudice, racism. Like, I will tell y'all, you know that book, that Carlos Bulasan book?
Yeah.
All the stuff they said about the Filipinos and the Ilocanos, my parents said about that. Like, yeah, they're like savages. They're no good. And did you know Ilocanos eat dog? And I'm just like, oh. Yeah. Then my dad, he would say things like, oh, Mexicans are so lazy. Yeah, we had gardeners that were Mexican. Okay. And don't even get me started on the Chinese. He's like, there are so many Chinese. They're like cockroaches. And going back into history, I probably have that Chinese merchant because they're the ones that had the money back then, you know, in the old days in the Philippines.
In the Ming
I
dynasty,
probably have that. Yeah. And I studied, if y'all have any questions, I studied all those dynasties for China. But anyways, I'm sure I have that. So, and don't even get me started on politics. And I'm not going to, I know this is not a political show, but it is just, I just could not just listen. Like my mom would just send me all kinds of texts supporting what happened with the Capitol, you know, raid. I'm just, oh my God, like borderline fascism. Yeah. So I really had to get out of that environment. Mm-hmm. Had I not met my husband, I would probably, I kid you not, be in arranged marriage with someone who had money and who was Caucasian.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
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 So.
Yeah, that's a toxic environment to be in, even if it is talking about the people that raised you, you know, and for you to even be able to detach yourself enough from that experience to understand, like, you know, a little bit of perspective when you hold it up against, like, you know, the rest of the world, and for you to be able to like speak that way about your family. And also, I love the history lesson that just came with your family background, by the way. That was great.
Do you hate me now? Or?
No. I love the history lesson. And the fact that you're so close to all of this information is wild. You know, like you mentioned, I've talked about on the show before how it was like pulling teeth to get this kind of information out of my grandma and grandpa. And they would, you know, the same kind of just keep trying to turn me off of the idea. Like, why do you even want to know about the Philippines and your Filipino identity? Like, you live here, you're here, just go, like, be American, be in the world, you know? But
exactly.
It sounds like at least some people in your family are willing to divulge you in these details. And even if they're not, you're able to pick up on just their normal behaviors, how that fits in with the context of our history, you know? And I think a lot of what you're saying you kind of like come at odds with your family about is like generational traumatic response, you know?
Yeah. And it got so bad. Like as a kid, I couldn't be friends with people who were dark skinned. I just could not. My mom wouldn't let me. I could not be friends with Muslims. I had a good Muslim friend in high school and my mom would not. I'm like, I'm sorry. She's my friend.
Yeah.
And she actually went into an arranged marriage because of her parents, got divorced, had kids. You know, now she's happy.
Yeah.
But I did not want that life. That would have been my life because my mom would always be like, oh, here's some suitors. And usually they're Caucasian. had money from this family. It got so bad with, my husband, my parents, they would not include him in the pictures. Like, can you move out of the way? I cannot, because they would send it to my relatives.
Yeah.
I just could not.
And like crop him out or something.
Yeah.
You're like, excuse me.
They wouldn't even allow it. And he's like, I've never felt welcome to you in your family. You've just got to put your foot down. And then they would say during Christmas, we would come over, don't bring your in-laws. And they were darker skinned. Yeah. But what I learned about his mom's side, they had some money. They were from the Bicol region. But basically, they were in the banking industry. I mean, they're darker, yeah, but they were out in the country. And I guess her brother, he was a higher up in the treasury and finance, like a political, someone political. So just because they have dark skin, so this is stuff that I've got to deal with. Yeah. Right. And y'all, you're going to laugh. I've been through therapy, with this. And my husband's like, because the therapist is always like, what do you feel? He's like, that's going to make things worse. So for me, it's just, I've accepted, like, this is my family. I don't try to fight it. I just, okay. Did you know, I just won't fight. I'm like, okay, but I'm not close, I'm closer to his family than I am to, like, they're my family. He's like, did you marry me for my family?
No, I appreciate you, like, just being so, again, candid about that and like open about how your family is, and you don't necessarily agree with them, but obviously they're still your family. And I think that that's a predicament that a lot of us find ourselves in, because all those things that you named, are alive and well. Like, it's generational trauma. It's alive and well in all of our families. It just manifests differently maybe. But I think we all at some point find ourselves in that space where, like, okay, I really don't agree with this, and I borderline, like, can't be around this person talking like this, and I can't really avoid them. So where is, like, the happy medium where, I can let them know, like, this is uncomfortable for me, or I don't agree with you, or, please don't talk like that around me, whatever your boundary is, while still saying, like, it's coming from a place of love, because I want to get along with you and I want to understand where you're coming from. And I also want you to do the same with me, right? But that's, like, not always a conversation that we can have, because it takes two to tango. So,
right. And my mom has walked away physically and on the phone. Let's not talk about this. And then she brings up politics again, So it got so bad that my brother was like, I just got to cut you off, because I don't want my kid, he has like a 3-year-old, around this political talk. Yeah. Because it is borderline fascism, and I just can't deal with it.
And can you imagine a little kid going to school and repeating some of that stuff that he hears at home? Like, I get, as a parent, that has to be a boundary,
Right. So, y'all talk about, like, not being seen, like, through society as Filipinos. I'm not being seen, in my own family. They wanted me to live that Maria Clara type. And my cousin, who's older than me, she's living with her parents, and she has kids, and she's like, why don't you just, you get all this money and blah, blah. And to me, and I told Jen, I actually left to go to college. I paid for college on my own, got 3 jobs. I went to UC Irvine, got a philosophy degree, and my husband's like, they're not even supporting you, so you don't even need them, like, financially. I've never needed them financially.
Right.
But it's always like, it's so funny, because when he went to Germany, because he's in the Air Force, and he had to pay back the Air Force overseas, and I was in Texas trying to do this real estate business. My dad actually said, Rachel, if things don't work, this is so funny. If things don't work out with your marriage, you can move back and live with us in Orange County and work at Best Buy. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. At that point, we had actually sold our entire real estate portfolio of single family homes. I was ready to make our next move. I didn't know what it was. It became mobile home investing. At that time, when he said that, I had $200,000 in cash in our bank account from that portfolio. But I didn't, I'm like, I can't. you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things, that it is your family, but you also have to set your boundaries, mental health,
Yeah.
and that's kind of one of the things that I have. But I just, sometimes it's too much. So,
Yeah. And I definitely feel you. And I think, again, whatever those boundaries look like for you is what you need to do, and you can't have that like guilt that comes with it of, oh, everyone's going to say this if I don't show up here because I don't want to see this person or I don't want to be uncomfortable around them. They just can't stop saying this, that, and the other about this, that, and the other.
And they try to pull you in.
Yeah.
There's always a reason, but in my family, it's always because of the money. Like my mom recently, there's some chismis. She had actually told me, hey, I want to get a life insurance policy for your daughter. I have a daughter, y'all. And so she can pay for it for college, and I read up because I'm in personal finance. They need your permission as the guardian for a life insurance policy.
Yeah.
But you will actually be the co-owner of that. So if my mom had stopped paying the life insurance policy, then we'd be on the hook. I'm like, I don't need this. And she was like, well, she can use it for something else and blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
you're like, it sounds like a trap to me.
Yeah, we already have a college fund set up for her and you can donate to it if you want. This is the thing I didn't tell her. That college fund, it's already funded for 4 years. My daughter's only 9. So we're looking at other investments for, because college is done, we've already got that built up. But I didn't say that. But it was just one of those things like, well, she can buy a house. I'm like, I can't deal with it.
When I hear your story, Rachel, it kind of makes me think of like, oh, this is what Princess Jasmine's life would look like if she ran away with Aladdin. And what I mean by that is, Princess Jasmine came from a place of privilege, fell in love and decided to, live out his lifestyle and kind of do that hustle. And it sounds like you had every means to, and you mentioned to me in the past, like kind of be that quote unquote trophy wife, like your mom. You could have easily have just been that socialite. You could have easily have, lived an easy lifestyle. But what you have come to find in your upbringing is you didn't like what came with that lifestyle. You didn't like the neglect of your parents. You didn't like the chismis, the gossip, the politics. Like you didn't like that stuff. Like you wanted something different for yourself. And so, I really just have to say, kudos to you for wanting to do that. And I also really do appreciate you sharing your side of the story. I think very often when we have guests on the show, and maybe it's because we don't always ask our guests this, but we often hear about us, like you mentioned earlier, trying to be seen and trying to put ourselves out there. But in a sense, you were kind of already set up for that, but you wanted something different, And, the whole story between the Visayans versus the Ilocanos, like my dad was Ilocano, and therefore my grandpa, who was part of the farmers, I wouldn't say farm workers movement, but definitely part of the, the farmers,
the Manong
agricultural
generation.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the Manong generation in the early 1900s. And I do recall in reading in Little Manila is in the Heart, as well as America's in the Heart with Carlos Bulasan, that like, Visayans, and you just, said it here, like really looked down upon Ilocanos. And I think even amongst the Filipino group, Ilocanos were kind of considered at the bottom of the totem pole of all Filipinos. And so it's just really interesting to, hear your perspective and your side. I mean, technically, we're not supposed to like each other, but here we are. Right? Like, I mean, I don't have any ill feelings, obviously, but I think like based off of history, we're supposed to be resentful or anything.
I can't deal with it because if they met you, if my parents met you, first off, Jen, you've said this a lot of times, you're darker skinned, so can't be friends with her. And then Nani, because you have some Russian background, my dad would say you're a communist.
Beautiful.
So,
lovely.
Growing up, I was very sheltered. I didn't, I could have had other friends, but but being a kid, you're like, well, you can't hang out with this person because they're dark skinned or they're a Muslim, blah, 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 blah. I still have to deal with that today. So my word of advice for people listening is you can't change other people. You can only change yourself and how you react to other people. And sometimes you may want, you got to choose your battles. Like, is this worth my time to battle? Because sometimes it's just like a broken record, So,
exactly. And that's what I'm saying. You can talk to someone all day until you're blue in the face, trying to convince
yeah.
them of how you feel or how you see it. At the end of the day, they're doing the exact same thing. So
Yeah.
if it's not,
Yeah.
if you can't create an environment where everyone kind of puts that like guard down and is able to see past it and have like a real conversation about what's underneath there, then there's not much you can do for that person if they're not willing to look at that part of themselves. You know what I
No.
mean? So again, like you said, you have to free yourself from it first and foremost and do what
Yeah,
you
and I
need
had
to
to
do.
take myself out of that environment
Yeah,
because I think my mom is just, and my parents are acting the way that their parents probably
of
taught them. It's
course.
a
Yeah, they
generational,
learned it from somewhere.
right. So I
Right.
can't like blame them. Like before I get so angry, but like I remember like my grandparents on my mom's side, they were so cold. And actually my grandma, when she sat down, we had to sit lower than her. Like the
Wow.
queen is here. Like we could not sit on the same level, like,
Whoa.
having a throne.
That's so
So
dramatic. Yeah.
she played that role of being the trophy. And I'll tell y'all, if anyone wants to be a trophy wife, it is a job
Oh,
because,
yeah.
arranging all those events. And I remember my mom's like, well, we got to have picture taking. And don't even get started on you got to be there at noon for a family event. They don't get there till 6 p.m. I got to go to my husband's family event. No, 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 crying, blah, blah, blah. And then just take the picture, took the picture. Okay, you can go. I can't deal with it. So, choose your battles.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I'm kind of just soaking everything that you're sharing with, taking everything in just because it's actually kind of funny. Like, I guess I'm just going to share this because, I have like binge watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And I say all this because a lot of what they do, they're socialized. They're known as American socialites. Like they put together events, and it's all about like networking and being amongst like the wealthy people. And in a sense, like your mom reminds me of that. Like your family reminds me of that, of like having to keep the social appearances and, making sure that you are modeling that Maria Clara archetype, as we talked about, like not like speaking out kind of thing. And, I just think it's just, in a way, it's nice to kind of see, at least from my perspective, it's nice to see like the other side of what it'd be like to be in that space. And although it may seem, in our eyes, it may seem quote unquote better, you're here telling us like, hey, there's a cost to living this life. There's a cost to quote unquote, or like, let's say like being wealthy in a sense. It's like you have to keep up appearances. You have to associate with certain people. It's, it's very political and it's very transactional with a lot of the relationships that you had. And so I'm curious to know, Rachel, like, why do you think that was so important to your parents? Like, what do you think they were trying to preserve? Were they trying to preserve their status? Were they trying to keep you safe? Like, why do you think, wholeheartedly, like deep down, why that was so important for them to protect you from all these things?
It was the family name and pride, really, because my parents, behind closed doors, they went on separate vacations. They were about to get a divorce.
Wow.
I mean, my dad was miserable. He just wanted to work all the time and he loved going on business trips. My mom was a socialite, so she had her group of friends, so like when we were at these events, it's like we're a family. But it's funny because my husband was like, I want to see pictures of you as a kid. Every single picture I would look like I'm in a bad mood. So that's really, really what it was like. And she's like, smile, 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 smile. Pictures. And then after
like,
pictures, okay, well, after the pictures, it's like, okay, I'm going to go with my friends. Like, this is it. I'm home at home. She's upstairs talking with her friends on the phone if she's not at an event with them. And then my dad would be drinking at the table, watching the Nature Channel. And then, it's just those things. So I would actually be hanging out with other people's families.
Wow.
Like I had a family from Chicago and they were Caucasian. I mean, a lot of them, it's Caucasian. And Jen knows, I only have 2 Filipino friends. One is an old friend from college I barely talk to. The other one, she has like 10 kids. And that's a story for another time. But, well, because my husband's, he's Filipino American. He's like, you should make some more Filipino friends. And he was the one who actually introduced me because they were actually at the school what my kid is attending. And so I got to know them. And I was like, why didn't you just come up to me? And she's like, it's so intimidating because you were going to be room parent for the entire school, and I'm like, okay. But anyways, that's another story. But, it was a lot of, I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. And to me, I don't seek people out because of the color of their skin, their ethnicity. If you're cool, I'm cool with you. I don't care what you look like. Obviously you want to be presentable, but, but you know what I'm talking about, So that's what my husband said. He's like, the thing I love about you is you're so innocent, and he's like, you don't see color. You just see people, like their personality and how they are and blah, blah, blah. So that's just kind of one of those things. But I had to get out of that environment because I could not. My cousin, who's older than me, she is still in that one. She's happy because, everything's paid for. So, but for me, I just can't. I had to walk away.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a double-edged sword, to want to live that quote unquote comfy life,
I was just thinking that also, because you grew up in a household where your family was kind of always tied up doing their own thing and you were left to just like go to your friend's house or hang out with other people's families, that obviously leaves a lot of room for like self-parenting in those formative years, right? So it's kind of no wonder you grew up kind of questioning what your family was saying at home, or maybe even like debating about it, arguing back. And so I think it's just interesting, like as a parent, how you navigate or kind of reconcile those like generational differences in like, oh, wow, my daughter is growing up and she's really seeing the world in a whole different perspective. And she has a whole different set of like opinions and beliefs about it than I do. And again, for me, it just rings true of like such a deeply generational traumatic response for someone to say, oh, I'm not interested in her point of view. I'm, you know what I mean, living here in my own world and I'm going to maintain that. And she's crazy because she's off doing, this, that, and the other. And she's not marrying a Caucasian man and whatnot. So yeah, I'm just thinking about that from like a parent's point of view, because I think that's something we try to consider on this show when we talk about like family differences and where we get kind of like butt heads with our families. And it always kind of boils down to that for me, I guess. And as a recent parent, obviously, I'm thinking about those things so I can try not to do them to my own kid. But yeah, those are just my final thoughts on that.
Yeah, I feel the same way because whenever my kid, because I am a workaholic, but I don't want to be like my parents.
Absolutely.
So my husband is always reminding me these little moments, because there's something that they say for kids, families, is the days are long, but the years go by so fast.
Yeah.
So
and you never get the time back.
No, you don't. So one of the things we started doing, I talked to y'all before this, we are riding electrical unicycle together. Oh my gosh, I felt so many times like trying to ride the electric unicycle. It's something like we do together that she will remember as a kid.
Yeah.
For me, my memories, oh my gosh, I just remember.
Are your parents forcing you to do things that they want to do?
Violin,
like take photos?
piano.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to a violin or piano recital for an award. Like, how many awards do I have? Like, I'm like totally the Asian stereotype. You play piano, So I'm just, I couldn't, I can't, And for her, I'm like, if you do like, you can, but I'm not going to force you to do these things as a kid. And it's only because like, oh, well, she has a writing lesson and she has tennis and she has a piano and she want to tell her friends that because they're all competing because they're in the same social circle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I just don't want to be in that. I'm actually now with COVID more of a homebody. I never was. My husband is a homebody and my daughter is too. So just kind of hanging out. And then if we want to ride the electric unicycle or the scooter outside, we're around the neighborhood and stuff like that. So just those little moments, like pay attention. Yeah. Cause my memories as a kid, I remember my dad, this is like the earliest memories. Like I wanted to play with them. And he's like, go away. I'm playing the guitar. And then those are the moments that I have and you're never going to get that back. So.
Right. And you wouldn't want to impart that on your child either. That's literally what generational trauma is, you know? And so I think it's also, I guess, a privilege to be in this generation where we're able to question these things and have these conversations and we're not so, internally tied up by it that we can't look it in the face and call it what it is.
Right, exactly. And it's been taking a long time to get here, but now I'm at a point where, my sanity is more important than keeping up appearances.
Amen.
So that's just me.
Snaps for that.
Yes. I would snap, but Nani's my snapper. So
yes, for you. That's for
thank you. I love where you're at right now in life, Rachel. It reminds me of where I'm at in life, and I may not have come from a family of privilege like yours. However, just like with many Filipino families, like I have had my share of traumatic situations and abusive and toxic type of relationships within my own family. And so what I've come to learn today is that I think that if you choose to be around people that is toxic, it's a form of codependency. It's like, I think if you choose to be around that kind of environment, it could mean one or two things. Like one, you kind of like, you're comfortable with it. Or two, it's like, you have codependency tendencies. And if there's anything that I've come to learn, and I'm just kind of really speaking on my own lessons, I'm not trying to preach to the choir here, is that I have learned that like, it's possible to coexist with people without being codependent. And what I mean is that if I'm around people, if I can coexist with people where we have like mutual respect for one another, then I consider that a healthy relationship. Unfortunately, when I think about even my own like relatives and family, just like with you, I eventually, my sanity became so much more important than that loyalty to my family. And this is just a general term when I say family, like family, relatives, etc. And it's a very courageous thing to do, because essentially when you step away from family, it's like you're voluntarily making yourself into an orphan in a sense. And so that's just sort of what comes to mind for me is like, you have been able to just sort of what Nani mentioned earlier, like I'm sure that in that time of you like having your parents been absent growing up, you had to maybe self-parent yourself in your own way. And here you are, today kind of being a person full of conviction, like knowing that you could easily, be that quote unquote trophy wife, easily like live that comfy life, but you're choosing to live a purposeful life, a life where you could be present with your daughter and your husband, and you make your own money like you already do. As I mentioned, you have a lot of amazing things in your life right now. And I think it's beautiful, honestly, and it's inspiring. And I think it's part of the reason why I continue to enjoy doing the show is because I get reminded that I've learned to, in a sense, redefine what family is for myself and what I want it to mean moving forward. And I have come to learn that I don't want to be in any relationship that makes me feel codependent, that makes me feel like I owe someone something, I'm in debt to them, or I'm not good enough, or like, they're not giving me the, let's say, emotional attention that I hunger for. It's like, I'm an adult, I'm allowed to seek that elsewhere now. It's like my family, they raised me to the point where I could leave the house. And now I can kind of redefine what my life looks like for me. And I sort of sense that in hearing your story. And I feel very relatable to your story in that sense that you chose to, step out of the socialite scene to be your own person. So kudos to you. And thank you for also even kind of affirming my decisions that I've made so far in my life.
I'd probably be bad as a trophy wife. One of the things is my husband, and also I was in the top 10% of my high school and my college, is that I had that intellect. Had I not had that intellect, maybe I would fall into that. But I did have that intellect. My English teacher wanted to get me into Berkeley. My constitutional law professor wanted me to get me into Columbia Law School. So I had that intellect. Had I not had that and been smart enough to figure it out, like what I wanted for myself, I may have been in that role. And it's funny that you said exactly what I was going to say about family. Because before I'd be so disappointed. I'd always give my parents a chance to explain them something and be the same thing over and over, the same excuse. And my husband just had to tell me, Rachel, you've just got to face the truth. This is not your family. Your family is us. The family is a different definition. It's the people who are there for you right now. Right. You're sitting with them, right here, TFAW Project, right? Stuff like that. So it's just kind of like a different way of looking. What is family? to me versus,
Absolutely.
okay, yeah, this is family. They're my blood, but what else, is
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I hear you on that. And Nani and I have had offline conversations about my personal life and what I feel like I have been facing. And I think that the definition of family has really been quite a challenge for me, and I'm sure for many of our listeners. So, I hope that for you, the listener, this conversation really inspires you or affirms that even if you feel like an orphan from your own biological family, that you are in a great position to redefine what family means for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think that that's maybe the theme of not the year, but the past season is like chosen family,
Yeah.
because I think, again, a lot of us find ourselves in that clash with our families where we don't agree, we don't want to condone it, we don't want to endorse it, but we also don't really want to, take on that battle. Like you said, Rachel, we want to choose our battles and prioritize our mental health, and we'd rather just remove ourselves from that situation. Yet we still want that connection, that belonging, that root. So it's important that we find that in spaces like this, with our chosen family.
Exactly. With that being said, that's why I joined biasboba.com as a member. Y'all gotta do it.
Well, speaking of which, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, again, I do appreciate, thank you for giving us a chance, because we've had many conversations and you just listed it all here already of the reasons why you distance yourself from the Filipino community. So I just have to thank you, again, for giving us a chance and believing in our community again, because, like the beauty of the Filipino community is we are diverse. And so, and I've said this many times on the show, like, I am not here for everyone. Not everyone is going to, resonate with my story. Not everyone's going to like the style of our show. Not everyone's going to like it. And that's okay, because I'm not meant for everyone. And I think that the lesson we need to learn in our community is you don't have to be for everyone, like, especially if you are a full-fledged working adult who could have the ability to get access to mental health. Like you are allowed to put yourself first. You are allowed to set boundaries. And it's okay to admit that you can't help everyone. In fact, being a fellow business owner, it's difficult to help everyone. You have to be really clear with the type of audience and type of customer you want to serve, because otherwise it's really costly, right?
We call it a personal avatar.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested.
Yeah. If anyone's
personal
interested.
Avatar, yes.
Yeah. Personal avatar, target audience, ideal client. Like, you really have to be like, every business has a particular audience. And if you're shopping from someone, like, just think about the last thing you spent money on. That company had every intent to market to you specifically, And so I think thinking about it in a business perspective as well, especially if you are an entrepreneur, firsthand that you can't help everyone. You do have to be specific. You do have to be mindful of your bandwidth and resources and energy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, at least for me, I have learned, having been self-employed for 12 years now, to be that specific. And I have, kind of planted my flag here in focusing specifically with, Filipina women in America, because it's like, that's what I know. That's what I'm familiar with. That's my passion. And I will die on this hill if I have to. Anyway, that was my rant.
Yeah. And to add to that, it all stemmed from a place of you also feeling that disconnect with your family and kind of estranged from them, and in kind of yearning that, again, connection and belonging with them, but not wanting to enter back into that kind of toxic environment, So I think that this is a result of that. Rachel, all the success you've had is a result of that. And for anyone who's listening who thinks, it's just too scary or too much to take that risk and kind of leave the nest, if you will, to explore something on your own, just think about that,
Yeah. Well, without even trying, Rachel, you answered all the questions I was going to ask you. So
that was beautiful, beautiful progression.
Yeah. I think that's a testament to how much you listen to the show, because you probably were anticipating certain questions anyway. But tell us real quickly, for people who are not yet a biasboba.com member, what has been your experience like consuming our content, our private content there so far?
Oh, the chismes. Okay, I will tell you all that because I didn't grow up in a Filipino community. So I didn't know what chismes was.
Yeah.
But I saw the cover, I guess, the podcast cover for it. And it was during December. And I thought it was actually a different way to spell Christmas with Jen and Nani. So I thought it was actually a holiday podcast that they were promoting.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And then they kept promoting it, but it was spring. I'm like, it's not Christmas anymore. We're not even in December.
You're like, I
so
know we celebrate Christmas for a long time, but not that long.
Yeah. So I went on Google because I'm kind of a nerd, and I Googled it. And now I know it means gossip, I think, right? Yep. Gossip. Yep. Yes. Yeah. So, y'all, that is the real deal. It's really fun. Actually, I did it, to stay in touch, but also I just love the book club replays.
Oh, love it.
I've been reading along. I haven't joined book club because I'm one of those people. I'm behind. I just started chapter 2. But if I'm going to be there in book club, I will have notes. I will have an outline, everything. That is not me. And I don't want to be called on by Jen.
Jen.
My bad.
So I have anxiety that way. So
I'll keep note of that next time.
Club, y'all, in the book club, Caitlin does an amazing job. She really dives into the content.
Yes. Shout out to Caitlin.
So, I mean, you're getting, and I calculated it, so on personal finance, it will cost you at this point, the membership, 2.5 cups of boba per month. So if you actually learn how to make your own boba, you can get that out of your budget.
Love it. Thank you, Rachel.
I love that. Can we just clip that and replay it in every episode?
Sure.
Our ringtone.
Sure. So 2.5 cups of boba per month. It ain't that hard to make boba. Okay. It is great just to kind of learn your heritage. And also Jen is really fostering a sense of community out there. And I think that she's doing it. And Nani, Jen and Nani, and also Hero. Sometimes he makes appearances as well too.
He does.
So I think what she is doing, because I will tell y'all, I haven't found that. Okay. Now I'm in personal finance. I did join a group. I'm making a lot of African American friends, and it feels like family over there. Like, girl, I got you, right?
Yes.
I have yet to find that in the Filipino community until TFAW Project, biasboba.com. And that's my spiel.
Rachel, thank you for selling us really eloquently. And I actually loved how when you were messaging us your feedback, I love how you described Chismes with Jen and Nani as the rated R version, or like the adult version of the TFAW Project. And we're a little more lighthearted here on TFAW Project. So if anyone's looking for the rated R version of Jen and Nani,
you guys got to join. It's fun. That's where all the action is. That's where it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like we covered everything, Rachel. I think we talked very extensively about, how we know each other and your family background and, a little bit about what you're doing today. And I just want to make sure that we've covered all of our bases here. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
Sure. What did you think about that gift, that link that I sent you? Did you all check it out? I wanted to give a gift to everyone.
Oh my gosh. Now I feel like I'm in trouble.
I wanted to give a gift. I have a special coffee roasting and brewing tutorial I would love to offer for anyone who joins biasboba.com and is currently a member.
Yes. I have that as my unread email. Like all the links, all the book or movie recommendations and stuff you sent me, that's like on my unread list. And so I definitely saw that. I didn't go all the way through with it. I apologize. Thank you for reminding us. And I appreciate you giving that offer to our supporters.
And I will tell y'all, this is not just some YouTube video I threw up on the internet. This is something that, since I'm in mobile home investing, I'm actually consulting with an award-winning director for a film for my mobile home expertise. They wanted me to put something together for their donors. Okay. So this is their donors. And this is a very professionally done, but basically I'm a coffee geek. My entire what I do when I do roast coffee at home, if you are interested in coffee, and also the history of coffee, and also my brewing techniques, and how you can actually roast your own coffee at home, even if you're on a budget. It'll blow you away. So join biasboba.com.
Ah, Rachel, you're the best. Also, I haven't forgotten, I still owe everyone a Chomperado video.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes, you do.
that is on my to-do list, just so y'all know. And I think as we start to, get back on YouTube and all that, and now that I'm settled, or I'm feeling settled, being where I'm currently at for 3 months now, it'll come around. It'll come around. It'll happen. It'll happen eventually. Just like how we always eventually get to your messages when you all either reach out to us via text message or email, or which actually, let me go ahead and wrap up with this. Actually, let me backtrack. Rachel, thank you so much for being on our show. Please let our listeners know. I'm sure there's going to be a number of them that want to reach out to you. How can they find you online?
Sure. Besides biasboba.com, and I may make an appearance at an event there if you do join as a member. Not sure about book club because I need to be super prepared. But besides biasboba.com, you can find me online at mobilehomegirl.com, and that's girl with a U.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have that in the show notes. Nani?
Yeah, I was just going to say, by the way, for the book club, you don't even have to read the book if you don't want to. You can totally just join for the conversation. Just join to hear other people's thoughts. Just join because you're curious about the book, but you don't want to read it.
Yeah.
I, for one, didn't even finish the last part before we recorded. So
I read it the weekend before.
Yeah,
don't feel like you need to come super prepared. We would rather just have you there.
One thing I did want to mention, if Caitlin is listening, this has been sitting on my desk for months. It's called The Embarrassment of Slavery by Michael Salmon. And I think Stacy she was in a video. She actually has it as well too. Mm-hmm. But since I found out about my family history and they may have owned slaves, I got interested in Filipino history in terms of slavery that happens in the Philippines. So this could be something Caitlin is interested in reviewing. And
yes.
Yeah, no, we would love to put that on our list. We could all review it together.
Yeah. And Rachel, I just love how you want to be an A student when you come up to our book club.
I am.
Obviously, there's no pressure,
but that's okay too. This is an unconventional classroom, okay?
Yeah, that is okay too. I mean, you may be teaching us.
Asterisk on the unconventional.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just super behind right now. I just started chapter 2, and I know you all, next club is going to be chapter 3. So
yeah, I haven't finished chapter 2 yet, so it's okay. We are willing to meet you where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. Well, with that said, I want to go ahead and remind our listeners that if you want to stay in touch with us, we do have a phone number, 415-484-8329. Again, that's 415-484-8329. Also, if you want to just be in touch with us via email, we do have a mailing list, which you can sign up for in the show notes. I want to stress both the text message and the phone number and the newsletter because Nani and I are busy. We rarely check our messages on our socials. We have found community in our newsletter as well as on biasboba.com. So that's where we're spending most of our energy. So if you do, message us on Instagram or our other socials, please don't take it personally. It's just because we ourselves are setting healthy boundaries and, focusing our energy in spaces such as biasboba.com because, we don't run the show for free. It does require some overhead and expenses. And, thanks to everyone's support on biasboba.com, we are finally a self-funded show. So Jen is no longer paying out of pocket. Y'all welcome for all this time. And it's thanks to people like Rachel and to our biasboba.com supporters for supporting us. So thank you all so much for that. Again, you can reach out to us via text message or email or sign up for our newsletter. We hope that you enjoyed today's conversation. You can get a hold of Rachel in the show notes. She has her website there, or of course, she kept promoting biasboba.com. Thank you, Rachel, for that. And with that said, Nani, any closing thoughts before we officially say goodbye?
No, just thank you, Rachel. It was so much fun to get to know you and your family background and again, the historical context behind it. So I think you really had a lot of value add to our community today. Thank you for sharing your story.
No problem. I had so much fun. That's why I continue to listen to the show. But y'all are professional. You produce a good show, but you also are all a lot of fun to hang out with and chat with. So.
Oh, thank
Likewise.
I'm
you.
here.
You should see us when we're drinking. It's even more fun.
Wow. Christmas with Jen and Nani.
Exactly.
Yep.
Chismes with Jen and Nani on biasboba.com. All right. With that said, thank you all so much for joining us. Happy 2022. I know it's already late, but I still like to say Happy New Year to anyone I haven't seen yet. We love and appreciate you all, and we'll chat with you in the next bonus episode before our next season. Tune in next time.
Yay. Bye.